2021 Mr. Olympia, Big Ramy.
All right.
Who knew that creating a body similar to ancient Greek athletes would transform the bodybuilding we know today? Join us as we unravel the journey, tracing how this magnificent sport evolved into its current glory. Number 10. The rise of bodybuilding. Before the world recognized the art of bodybuilding as we know it today, there were strongmen, figures of immense strength with feats that have yet to be surpassed. We're talking about strongmen like William Bankier or Louis Cyr, men who could perform feats that sound almost mythical in our time. Strongmen of those times used to bend iron bars like spoons and bend bars over the nose for fun.
Bending the bar across the neck was a comparatively simple matter. Bending the bar over the nose is more of a family affair. But our smiling corporal hasn't finished yet.
William Bankier used to lift a grand piano with a six-person orchestra and a dancer atop, playing melodies as if the weight meant nothing to him. Oh, and the audiences back then witnessed unbelievable spectacles like harness lifting of an elephant. These were the entertainers of their day, and they helped set the stage for what was to come. The true beginning of modern bodybuilding revolves around one man. Any guesses? Well, it was Eugen Sandow, who truly transformed the display of brute strength into an art form that celebrated the human physique in its most athletic and balanced form. The clip that you're watching right now is one of the first bodybuilding films ever made. It was created by Thomas Edison in 1894. It featured Sandow showing off his incredible physique. What makes this clip even more spectacular is Sandow's sheer confidence in his ideal form of muscular development, which was so magnificent that Edison deemed him the epitome of human perfection. Compelled by Sandow's impressive form, Edison felt an irresistible urge to immortalize his splendid might and glory through film. Rightfully called the father of modern bodybuilding, Sandow began to sculpt a new future for physical culture by modeling his body on the chiseled statues of ancient Greek athletes. Unlike the strongmen before him, Sandow didn't just focus on how much weight he could lift or the number of people he could carry. Instead, he tuned his attention inward to the development of his body's symmetry and proportion. It was a revolutionary idea at the time, the very idea that the body could be a canvas, a thing of beauty, and not just a machine for performing Herculean tasks. By the way, his training program included a full-body giant set with 100 reps for each muscle group. But having such a ripped body alone wouldn't make him the father of bodybuilding, right? So what did he do to make bodybuilding so popular? Well, Sandow was not just a visionary, he was a showman, a marketer. He capitalized on his well-chiseled physique, performing across stages, leaving audiences in awe of his Greek godlike figure. Yet, the true masterstroke in popularizing bodybuilding was his introduction of bodybuilding competitions. He was the one who organized the first modern bodybuilding competition in 1901, called the Great Competition in London. The immensely popular first competition was not just of strength, but of symmetry and proportion. People at the time didn't know what bodybuilding was, and yet the venue was so full that people were turned away from the door. This is how Sandow started the Bronze Era of bodybuilding, an era where the training methods were rugged and unrefined. Let's dive deeper into the early beginnings of this great sport. It's about to get more exciting. Number 9. Bronze Era of bodybuilding. 1894 to 1939. Now let's turn back the clock to the raw days of the Bronze Era of bodybuilding, a time when legends were built from iron, sweat, and sheer willpower. And the best part, nothing involved taking enhancement drugs or anything, just pure food and workouts. In this chapter of our journey through the evolution of bodybuilding, we'll step into the shoes of pioneers who had little more than basic weights and their unbreakable spirit. Yet they sculpted physiques that would become the blueprint for generations to come. So in the early 20th century, the shadow of Eugen Sandow loomed large, but there was a new breed of muscle sculptors on the block who followed in Sandow's footsteps to create their own legacies. For instance, Sigmund Klein needs no introduction. He was all about the mind-muscle connection long before it was a hashtag. Starting off as a skinny kid, Klein transformed himself into a powerhouse, proving that it's not just about lifting weights, but how you lift them. He believed in visualizing every muscle move, focusing on quantity over quality. Simple but revolutionary. Then there's John Grimek, the unbeatable, the guy who never lost a contest. Yes, you heard that right, never. His secret? Well, aside from being freakishly strong, Grimek knew his body better than anyone else. He trained smart, ate right, and most importantly, never gave up. And when he became so good that he was banned from competitions to give others a chance, you know he was doing something right. There were other legends of Bronze Era bodybuilding as well who took the sport to the next level of popularity. For instance, there is George Jowett, popularly known as the father of American weightlifting. Then there was Otto Arco, who was a world champion wrestler and rated the world's most perfectly developed man in 1913. But what truly set the Bronze Era apart wasn't just the men, it was their method. In a time before protein shakes and performance supplements, these pioneers used what was available: basic barbells, dumbbells, and their own body weight. They turned their limitations into their strength, crafting innovative exercises and training techniques that would lay the groundwork for the bodybuilding revolution. The evolution of bodybuilding in the Bronze Era can well be described as the time when it wasn't just about being strong. These bodybuilders were pioneers in their own ways, experimenting with new techniques and pushing their bodies to the limits nobody thought possible. They had to be creative and invent new ways to train and grow stronger every day. Number 8. Silver Era of Bodybuilding, 1940 to 1960. Alright, let's dive deeper into the Silver Era of bodybuilding. This period, spanning the 1940s to the early 1960s, was more than just a transition. It was a transformative era where bodybuilding icons became household names. Back then, anabolic steroids were not common, though they were discovered in the late 1930s. It was the era where bodybuilding began to polish its raw strength into a spectacle of aesthetic perfection and charisma. First off, let's talk about Steve Reeves. Did you know he was the real-life Hercules? Yes, Hercules Reeves brought the myth to life, not just through his roles in films, but with a physique that seemed sculpted by the gods themselves. His secret? Balance and symmetry over sheer size. Reeves showed the world that a bodybuilder could be a movie star, setting the stage for bodybuilding to enter mainstream culture. When he donned the character's lion skin and wielded the club in the 1958 film Hercules, he wasn't just acting. He was setting a precedent. This movie wasn't just a hit. It was a phenomenon that brought the aesthetics of bodybuilding to the silver screen in a way that had never been done before. With Reeves in the lead, the film showcased a physique that was powerful yet balanced, muscular yet aesthetically pleasing. His portrayal of Hercules was more than just a role. It was a declaration that bodybuilders could embody the ideals of classic beauty and heroic strength. Reeves's Hercules became a symbol of ultimate masculinity and strength, catapulting the bodybuilder into international stardom. Who would have thought they'd be seeing a bodybuilder as the hero? That was revolutionary.
You've been avoiding me lately, and I'm awful of acid and electricity.
Well, you just tell Grandpa to give you a steam bath and stop thinking. It always upsets you.
Then there was Reg Park, a titan who not only matched Reeves in charisma, but also introduced a new level of intensity to bodybuilding training. Park was the first to advocate for the now famous 5x5 training method, showing that simplicity, when applied with brute force and consistency, could sculpt a physique worthy of Mr. Universe. Yes, you heard that right. Reg Park was a 3-time Mr. Universe, and he made sure everyone knew bodybuilding was a sport of discipline and dedication. But it wasn't just about the individuals. The Silver Era was when bodybuilding as a sport began to truly shine. With the advent of the Mr. Universe competition, bodybuilders from across the globe could showcase their physiques, competing not just for titles, but for the admiration of audiences worldwide. The first Mr. Universe contest was held in 1948, at a time when the world was just beginning to recognize bodybuilding as a serious sport and a true art form. The introduction of Mr. Universe during the Silver Era of bodybuilding was a game changer. It transformed bodybuilding from a niche interest into a global phenomenon, setting the stage for the sport's future growth. Also, bodybuilding magazines characterized this era a lot. While we might reach our favorite fitness influencer after clicking on Instagram on our smartphones, magazines were the only medium that let people look at pictures of men in pursuit of crafting the perfect physique. This was the heyday of Muscle Power, Muscle Builder, later changed to Muscle and Fitness, and Iron Man magazines. So it won't be wrong to say that the Silver Era had an instrumental role in the evolution of bodybuilding we know today. After all, it introduced a new way of bodybuilding with the fusion of aesthetics, charisma, and a dash of Hollywood glamour. Bodybuilders were no longer just athletes, they were symbols of the ideal human form, inspirations to millions aspiring to sculpt their own bodies into works of art. Number 7. Golden Era of Bodybuilding, 1960 to 1983. Now it's time to cue the dramatic music and fasten the seatbelts, because we're about to blast into the most electrifying chapter in the history of bodybuilding, the Golden Era. This isn't your average walk down memory lane. It's a turbocharged sprint through a time when muscles got bigger, personalities larger, and bodybuilding blasted into the mainstream like never before. This crazy era brought us legends whose names are still revered today. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bronco Colombo, Frank Zane, and Lou Ferrigno, just to name a few. These athletes became more than just bodybuilders, they were celebrities, their physiques and personas catapulting bodybuilding from the shadows of niche exhibitions into the bright lights of mainstream culture. We'll talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger's role in detail very soon, so let's focus on the other bodybuilders of the Golden Era who were also changing the dynamics of the sport. For instance, Frank Zane, known for his aesthetic perfection, brought a different dimension to the sport. His physique was about out-of-this-world symmetry and proportion, proving that you didn't need to be the biggest to be the best. Then there was Lou Ferrigno, with his imposing frame and incredible mass, who became the symbol of raw power. His transition into the role of the Incredible Hulk on television further bridged the gap between bodybuilding and mainstream media. But what really sets the Golden Era ablaze? The answer is the Mr. Olympia contest. Seriously, it catapulted bodybuilding of that time to a whole new level of popularity with its tension, the excitement, and the air thick with anticipation as the most incredible physiques from around the globe compete for the ultimate title. Mr. Olympia didn't just crown champions, it crowned legends and made the sport way more popular than ever before. That's why the Golden Era was the time when bodybuilding truly muscled its way into pop culture. It was everywhere, in magazines, movie screens, and yes, even on the TV, turning bodybuilders into household names and fitness into a worldwide obsession. Also, the Golden Era marked a turning point in bodybuilding that some consider necessary, while others are against it. Yep, it was the introduction of the widespread use of steroids. It was a time when the pursuit of the perfect physique began to push the boundaries like never before. Steroids transformed the sport, allowing athletes to achieve previously unimaginable levels of muscle size and definition. It was a controversial shift, but there's no denying the impact it had on the sport. Bodybuilders could now reach new peaks of muscularity, setting the stage for an era where muscle size became just as important as symmetry and aesthetics. Number 6. The Arnold Schwarzenegger impact. Do you know what the greatest day in the history of bodybuilding and the world of fitness was? It was July 30th, 1947, the day the champion and one of the greatest influences in the bodybuilding community was born. Born in the outskirts of Graz, Austria, Schwarzenegger began lifting weights at the age of 15. At this time, he was a skinny boy weighing a mere 160 pounds. Inspired by the physique and success of Reg Park and encouraged by his father, he soon began to rapidly build up his body training as much as 5 hours per day. In a short 3 years, he had already won the Austrian Junior Weightlifting Championship, as well as the Junior Mr. Europe title. This was just the beginning of his reign of supremacy. Schwarzenegger didn't stop there. He went on to conquer the prestigious Mr. Universe a total of 5 times. 4 of these wins were with the NABBA organization in England, and 1 was with the IFBB in the USA. This achievement solidified his status as a rising star in the bodybuilding world. However, his greatest triumphs came on the stage of the Mr. Olympia competition. This event, considered the pinnacle of professional bodybuilding, witnessed Arnold's dominance for a staggering 7 years. From 1970 to 1975, he stood atop the podium undefeated. This record-breaking reign established him as a legend in the sport. So can Arnold Schwarzenegger be rightfully credited with the popularization of bodybuilding? The obvious answer is a resounding yes. After all, no other bodybuilder in the history of the sport has made the same impact. In many ways, Arnold helped to change public attitudes toward a sport regarded as deviant and on the margins of what was acceptable social practice at the time. Indeed, prior to the 1970s, the period in which Arnold made his mark as the greatest bodybuilder of all time, bodybuilding and its adherents were together seen as a strange and somewhat insular subculture of social deviance. These attitudes still prevail in some sectors, but due in large part to Arnold's popularization of the sport, bodybuilding has become not only accepted as a legitimate sporting choice, but also as a way of life for many. By 1983, Arnold had achieved the American dream. He had become a successful actor, one of the world's greatest athletes, and a wealthy businessman. Still, he never lost touch with the foundational element of his success, the bodybuilding lifestyle. Wherever possible, Arnold would promote bodybuilding and practice what he preached, keeping himself in great shape, the kind of shape that could be seen in many films in which he acted. In 1989, Arnold's dream of promoting his own show came to fruition, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, or the ASC, was born. The many great bodybuilders who have competed in the ASC over subsequent years have been granted the opportunity to realize their dreams through the efforts of a man who started it all. A man who will remain the backbone of the sport. Arnold has become an icon, a symbol of a cultural movement, one who has defined and redefined what it meant to be one of the few, a bodybuilder, proud of one's healthy physique and the concomitant benefits. Known for his larger-than-life persona and the iconic roles in films like Terminator and Predator, Schwarzenegger has become a household name across the country, which has certainly played a huge role in making bodybuilding popular. So indeed, Arnold Schwarzenegger remains the greatest and most influential bodybuilder of all time, and his role in the evolution of bodybuilding is simply invaluable.
The winner of the 1975 overall Mr. Olympia, the one and only, the greatest, Arnold Schwarzenegger!
Number 5. Transition to anabolic steroids. Anabolic steroids were first discovered to promote muscle growth and enhance athletic performance in the 1930s. You see, testosterone was first synthesized in Germany in 1935 and was used medically to treat depression. However, professional athletes began misusing anabolic steroids during the 1954 Olympics, when Russian weightlifters were given testosterone. In the 1970s, anabolic steroid use began to extend into the general population, and young men began using these substances, sometimes to enhance athletic performance, but in most cases to improve personal appearance. So while the Bronze Era bodybuilders didn't use steroids, there are cases of its use during the Silver Era. The temptation of steroid use in bodybuilding is undeniable. They could transform a great physique into something almost superhuman. However, the cost of this transformation isn't just measured in dollars and cents, but in health risks and ethical dilemmas. So when bodybuilders in the 1970s to 1980s started using steroids more commonly, some horrifying stories began to emerge. Bodybuilders started facing serious, sometimes life-threatening side effects, from heart issues and kidney failures to hormonal imbalances and liver diseases, raising alarms both within and without the bodybuilding community.
A well-known Sydney bodybuilder has died after collapsing in a sauna in Thailand.
The death of an 18-year-old student who took an anabolic steroid.
Also, there was the ethical point of view to consider because using steroids gave bodybuilders an edge over those who didn't. This debate led to a crucial turning point, the implementation of drug testing in certain bodybuilding competitions. Organizations like the International Federation of Bodybuilding and Fitness, or the IFBB, began introducing drug tests in an effort to level the playing field and address the growing concerns over health and fairness. Yet the introduction of drug testing wasn't a magic solution. It opened a new set of challenges, from the complexities of testing methods to the ongoing cat and mouse game between testers and those finding new ways to evade detection. Unfortunately, this is still the case even today. One thing we know is that steroid use is an open secret in the sport. In fact, bodybuilders nowadays use more potent chemical concoctions to enhance their physique than ever before. However, using performance-enhancing drugs isn't something new. You'll be shocked to know that over the decades, many golden-era bodybuilders have confessed to using PEDs. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Frank Zane, Dorian Yates, and Ronnie Coleman have admitted to using them.
Steroids are taken 8 or 9, 10 weeks before competition. It's not a healthy thing to do, but it's being used.
Did you take them?
I took them, up until the competition.
The impact of anabolic steroids on bodybuilding is a complex legacy. On one hand, they contributed to the evolution of the sport, pushing the boundaries of human physique. On the other, they exposed vulnerabilities, both physical and ethical, forcing the community to confront the true cost of excellence.
Would you have ever taken steroids, even if you were available?
Never, because it's not health-oriented. Yeah. I mean, I plan to live to be 100. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'm going to try. And that there would get me dead at 65 probably.
Number 4. The beginning of mass era, 1984 to 1991. This period is where the bodybuilding landscape underwent a seismic shift, transforming the classic V-shaped physique into mountains of muscle that seemed to defy human limits. It was the start of something new, and it all began with one guy. You have 5 seconds to guess. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. We're talking about the man who set the stage for a shift that was revolutionary and controversial later on, Lee Haney. So, can you even say that the time between 1984 and 1991 was Lee Haney's era? You ask why? We say why not? After all, Haney wasn't your average bodybuilder. He was a bridge between two worlds. With an unprecedented mix of size and aesthetics, Haney dominated the scene, bagging 8 Mr. Olympia titles. He was muscular, yes, but it was his unique blend of mass with shape that made him stand out. Many historians of the sport argue that if Schwarzenegger had not traded the stage for the silver screen, it would have been Haney who would have ended his streak. This isn't just speculation, it's a testament to Haney's groundbreaking impact on bodybuilding. His emergence signaled the dawn of a new era, one where the scales tipped slightly, yet significantly, towards mass without sacrificing the grace of symmetry. But Haney's era wasn't just about him, it was a period of huge change. You see, when Haney stepped onto the scene, the whole rulebook on judging muscle started to change. It was no longer about looking good, it was about looking huge while still nailing those poses. This shift shook things up for the guys who were all about the aesthetic vibe, making it tougher for the likes of Bob Paris, who was the epitome of symmetry and grace. You could say that Haney's era gave birth to legends like Kevin Levrone, Sean Ray, and Rich Gaspari, who were not just competitors but icons setting new benchmarks. These guys were the real MVPs, pushing each other to stack on more muscle, redefine what's possible, and still make it look darn good. Lee Haney was the trendsetter in the truest sense for what has become the norm in bodybuilding. He was the bridge from the classic era of sculpted aesthetics to the modern-day behemoths, proving you could be massive and still have that artistic touch. His era was about evolution, breaking molds, and setting the stage for what bodybuilding was destined to become. So as we talk about the Haney era, we're not just reminiscing about a time gone by, we're acknowledging a pivotal shift in the bodybuilding universe, a time when the sport got a serious upgrade. It was the era that set the bar higher, changed the rules of the game, and showed us that the limits were just in our heads.
Show people that they can do. All it takes is determination. You'll get your chance.
Number 3, the Mass Monster era, 1992 to 2010. The most controversial bodybuilding era is the Mass Monster era from the late 1980s to 2010. The mass monsters of this era were, well, as the name suggests, monsterly big. This was a time when bodybuilders pushed the absolute boundaries of muscle gain and, in the view of some individuals, began to sacrifice aesthetics for sheer mass or extreme leanness. This era gave the bodybuilding world some big names like Lee Haney, Dorian Yates, Marcus Rule, Paul Dillette, Nasser El Sonbati, Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Gunter Schlierkamp, Bev Francis, and Iris Kyle. This era also coincided with controversies surrounding steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs in sports, culminating in the United States passing the Anabolic Steroid Control Act of 1990, which classified anabolic steroids as a controlled substance and subject to tight government regulations. This led to the one and only drug-tested Mr. Olympia in September 1990, which Lee Haney won, though it was not without controversy. After the retirement of Lee Haney in 1991, Dorian Yates became the new Mr. Olympia in 1992. Till then, Dorian Yates had a physique similar to Lee. This didn't really sit well with Dorian. He wanted to be the Dorian Yates of bodybuilding, not a Haney lookalike. Things were about to get big. After the 1992 victory, Yates went back to England, trained underground, and came out freaking 30 pounds heavier in 1 year. The size he carried shocked the world. Rumors have it that Yates was the first to experiment with growth hormone and insulin. He was 270 pounds, the heaviest bodybuilder ever. Big boy Lee Haney weighed a maximum of 243 pounds. Yates' transformation was extraterrestrial. It was simply metamorphosis, not only monster size. Yates had paper-thin skin. He was so shredded that you could see every muscle fiber in his entire body. The world had never seen a bodybuilder so huge and shredded to the bone. Fans loved him and the judges could not ignore him. For the next 5 years, Yates won every competition he entered. Mr. Olympia was Dorian's backyard right from 1992 to 1997. Wins on wins. Different training systems existed, but there was even a resurgence of Mike Metzer's heavy-duty training, thanks to Yates' blood and guts style. Regardless of whether one used bro splits or heavy-duty training, the champions focused on lifting heavy weights. This was amplified in the 2000s when Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler bulked up more and more as Olympia wins piled up. Ultimately, the era began to fizzle out in the early 2010s as fans and judges began looking for more than just size in their competitors. Number 2. The Modern Era, 2010 to present. It is fascinating to see how bodybuilding, with its roots stretching back to ancient Greece, has evolved so much over the centuries to turn into the beautiful sport that we all love. And in terms of popularity, the modern era has witnessed the greatest rise in the history of bodybuilding. Not only has professional bodybuilding been taken to another level, but also the number of people working out and getting ripped is greater than ever before. This modern era of bodybuilding, which future generations may call the mass aesthetics era, can best be characterized by drastic changes in the sport. It seems like there is a bit of rethink about just how big bodybuilders need to be. Instead of just going for size, there's a new trend in town: aesthetics. Yep, we're talking about building muscles that not just look big, but look good. Even though champs like Mandu Big Ramy LCBA remind us of the days when size was everything, the vibe is changing. Now it's not just about being massive, it's about having muscles that are well-defined, balanced, and let's be honest, pretty pleasing to the eye. Guess what's making waves in the bodybuilding world in the modern era? There's a big shift happening, and it's all about going back to basics, but in a cool, modern way. The spotlight's moving away from the bigger is better mantra of the men's open division to something a bit more classic, the classic physique category. Here, it's all about crafting a lean, mean, golden era-inspired body. It's like bodybuilding is taking a stylish step back in time, appreciating the variety and aiming for that timeless sculpted look. And who's leading the stylish comeback? Chris Bumstead, the champion of the classic physique, has become the poster boy for this trend. With millions of fans following his every move on social media, it's clear he's struck a chord. And let's not forget Derek Lunsford, the 2023 Mr. Olympia, who climbed up from the 212 division, showing that shifting focus can lead to big wins. This whole movement signals that maybe the bodybuilding world is ready to say see ya to the era of the mass monster and hello to physiques that are all about balance and symmetry. One important thing to note about the modern era of bodybuilding is that it has inclined more toward a scientific approach. Gone are the days of pure instinctual training. Bodybuilders now rely on progressive overload, or gradually increasing weight or difficulty, periodization, or planned training cycles with specific goals, and muscle group isolation for targeted development. Number 1. Evolution of nutrition and training. Back in the Bronze Era, bodybuilders like Eugen Sandow were chiseling their physiques with basic yet brutal exercises and a diet that was simple: eat big to get big. The nutrition mantra was straightforward: meat, eggs, and more meat, with a side of whatever carbs you could get your hands on. These were the days of raw power, where a strongman's diet was as rugged as their training. Fast forward to the Silver Era, and things started getting a bit more refined. As we step into the 1940s and 50s, the likes of Steve Reeves are not just lifting heavy, but also thinking heavy about what they put into their bodies. The focus? High protein, but with a balance. Milk, eggs, and fresh veggies start making regular appearances on the dinner plate, showcasing an early understanding that muscles need more than just bulk to grow. Whereas the Golden Era was the time when the science of nutrition started flexing its muscles, bodybuilders began to zero in on the importance of protein intake, timing their meals, and even starting to play around with supplements to give them an edge both in the gym and on the competition stage. It was not just about eating big anymore, it was about eating smart, but the approach needed to evolve more. The Golden Era nutrition approach was nothing compared to what we have today. Nowadays, it has become way more disciplined and it's all about following strict dietary plans that prioritize macronutrient ratios, calorie intake, and nutrient timing. We're talking about meticulously calculated protein, carb, and fat ratios designed to maximize muscle growth and minimize fat gain. And let's not forget about the supplements: whey protein, BCAAs, creatine, and you name it, there's a supplement for it, all engineered to make those muscles pop. And it's not just the food that's evolved. The way bodybuilders train has undergone a revolution. Gone are the days of purely basic, compound exercises. While they'll still form the backbone of any solid training regimen, today's bodybuilders have a whole arsenal of science-backed techniques at their disposal. We're talking about everything from the precise manipulation of rep ranges and rest periods to the integration of cutting-edge resistance training equipment that makes those old-school barbells look like relics. In short, there has been a shift towards a more scientific approach to training, focusing on progressive overload, periodization, and targeting specific muscle groups. Additionally, bodybuilders now incorporate a wider variety of exercises, including isolation exercises, compound movements, and functional training. Imagine if the bodybuilders of the Bronze or Silver Era had such training equipment that we have today. And there you have it, folks. You might be wondering what's next for bodybuilding. Well, time will tell, but one thing is for sure: the journey will be epic, filled with new heroes, groundbreaking achievements, and undoubtedly more chapters to add to this incredible story. Don't forget to smash that like button if you've enjoyed this ride through bodybuilding's history. Subscribe for more content that dives deep into this amazing sport and the stories that move us, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a beat of the action. Share your thoughts, your inspirations, and what you'd like to see in the next video in the comments section below.